Hello everybody and welcome to another top 10 board game video. Today is all about games that are designed for kids, but before I get started, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all of my various social media pages as well as my Patreon page. On all of those, you'll be able to interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really cool ways. So jumping right into it, what do I mean by board games that are designed for kids? These are games that primarily are games designed for people who, at age like 7 or 8 to start off with, as far as complexity is concerned, and in my opinion at least do a wonderful job of introducing kids to things like strategic thinking, long-term planning, critical thinking, imagination, and all sorts of other different stuff. All of those really important things that kids aren't necessarily getting enough of in school, but that's an entire other video. One thing that I really wanted to avoid with this one was to not do very many of the sort of downgraded versions of board games. So for example, we've got like Ticket to Ride, My First Journey, and then Catan Jr. Things along those lines I really tried to avoid because I wanted to pick games that are genuinely fun for both children and adults and really serve as wonderful learning experiences, again, especially in those formative years starting around 7 to 8 and going all the way up through teenage years. But with that, you guys know I love to hear from you and what you all have to say. What are your favorite games to play with your kids, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, whoever it happens to be in your life who are of this age? Please let me know because this is a huge category. There's a ton of gaming parents out there who really want to know about it. I've had several comments about it and that's why I'm doing this video in particular. But with that, we are going to get started with my own number 10. At number 10, I've got Potion Explosion. First and foremost, this game is so low on the list because it's actually recommended for, I believe, 14-year-olds. Most of the reason is because it's got small marbles in it, but that's beside the point. The game mechanics itself are really interesting because it leads to a lot of strategic and long-term thinking in terms of what's coming up next. The whole point is that you grab a marble, take it out, and whatever collides together, if it's the same color, you can take those and you can create giant chain reactions. It's a really cool, very colorful mechanic, and it's something that kids can see and hear simultaneously. So it works really well on multiple senses, and on top of that, the whole point is that you're making potions which are very colorful, bright, and all that good stuff. Kids absolutely love it. Potion Explosion, my number 10. At number 9, I've got Sushi Go. This is another game that's super adorable, plays very fast, and is really easy to learn. In addition, you're talking about card drafting, so this is a lot of sort of strategic planning ahead, trying to remember what cards were where, who potentially is getting what, and seeing what people are having on them. So this is a great way to learn memorization and seeing what's going on, as well as thinking ahead in terms of, okay, how is the scoring done? What do I need in order to get that? And on top of that, you got set collection in the context of not only who has the most, but avoiding having the least of particular hits as well. So it's really fun, again, very colorful. It's a very light game. It's strictly card based, so it's not for everybody, and again, it's one that you're not going to be bringing out all the time, but overall, it's a great little game. Sushi Go, my number 9. At number 8, I've got Kodama, the Tree Spirits. This is a game that I was relatively recently introduced to, and I really enjoy it, especially for younger kids. So the reason for that is you've got your own hand of cards, and the idea is that you're trying to branch out from your central tree trunk. So it's a really aesthetically pleasing game because you're growing out a tree and it looks really nice, and the idea is that you've got either bugs or a fungus or some kind of bonus item on your branches, and you're trying to get as many of those as possible in a row. So it's great in terms of the long-term planning for kids so that they can start seeing those and spotting those little details and those small differences. You also have action cards that allow you to change key things at specific times, so that way if you really need to make the swap, then you can see that. It's a little bit meatier, and so it's really nice in that sense, and like I said, younger kids can grasp it a little bit better because they only have their own cards that they're looking at as opposed to drafting. So it's a lot of fun, again, very adorable, really aesthetically pleasing. Kodama, my number 8. At number 7, I've got Dixit. If you guys have seen some of my videos before, you may know that I'm not the biggest fan of this game or the series, but when it comes to playing games with kids, it's really, really fun, and it's a very unique experience because this is where you can see a lot of imagination really come to life. And it's great at especially the younger years of like 6, 7, 8, right around there, where you can see kids really trying to interpret, what is this picture? What does it mean? What can I say? All of that kind of stuff. And it's absolutely incredible. And the great thing with this is because it's designed as a very, very family-friendly game, you don't even have to keep score necessarily. You can just sit there and look at the pictures and just describe what the pictures are. It can work great as emotional therapy or any number of other things. It's a wonderful game in that sense, but at the same time, the game aspect, quote unquote, is less there. You don't have nearly as much planning or critical thinking or any of those aspects. But as far as the higher level type of emotional learning and imagination type things, you really can't beat it. Dixit, my number 7. At number 6, I've got Hive, a modern classic of very simple rules that leads to complex thinking. So in this game, you've got individual insect types that will move in very specific ways around a tile board that you build up with a very simple goal of surround your enemy's queen. This abstractly is relatively similar to things like Onitama or chess, and again, requires a lot of that same think 3 moves ahead type of thing, but it's, in my opinion at least, better than those games because the way that the pieces move is very, very different. You've got the different types of insects that move in very different ways, so you have to watch a lot more means by which your opponent can come in and jump over you and do all of that kind of stuff. And again, for those formative years of 7, 8, 9, right around there, this is a great game to really start with. And on top of that, the fact that it's a 2-player game is wonderful because you can really sit there and help out your, whether it's your child, niece, nephew, cousin, whatever it is, and really show him or her, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and you made that move, but it might not have been the best, and let me explain to you why. So really getting those cogs turning and really helping them to think through things and think through their decisions. Again though, very, very quick, super simple to learn, and really fun game. That said, not everybody likes bugs, but what are you gonna do? Hive, my number 6. Now you had to know we had to have at least one cooperative game on this list, and honestly the main reason for it is just because kids really have to learn teamwork. You have to learn how to work with other people and accomplish a collective goal. In this case, protecting the castle. This is a very simple example of many cooperative games that are available where you only need to track within your cards how far away is it effective and what color it is. And then you have all of the tabletop discussion of, well, I've got this, this, and this available and all that kind of thing. Now, I will warn you, it's really easy as adults to really start alpha gaming this and sort of quarterbacking it and basically say, okay, we need this and this and this and this from your hand. You really want to try to avoid that if you're playing with children because you want to make sure that they can volunteer the information that they have and come up with some ideas on their own. You really have to make certain that that happens. Now that said, this game is recommended for a little bit of an older crowd, around 10 or so, but at the same time, if you're really good about keeping that balance between controlling what the kid does and making sure that they offer information, you can play it with much younger kids, and it can be a lot of fun and it works really well. That said, I don't recommend playing with the expansion. I recommend just playing with the base game. It works really well. It's still a ton of fun, plays a little bit longer. You still get all of that critical thinking, strategic thinking, long-term planning, all of that good stuff because you're seeing the guys wander around and everything. It's a lot of fun. Castle Panic, my number 5. At number 4, I've got King Domino / Queen Domino, depending on how advanced the kids are in terms of how they play games. These are great introductory games to a lot of Euro-style mechanics. We're talking about a little bit of initiative order manipulation in terms of do I want to go first or last, and we've got a lot of actual tile placement and strategic placement in terms of what do I already have, so what am I eligible to get, and all sorts of different stuff like that. It's a really great way to introduce kids to a lot of the nitty-gritty that comes with the more granular aspects of strategic thinking and long-term planning and sort of 2 moves ahead type of thing. And again, it's great because the kids are working in their own little world. So it's nice. It is competitive, but it's not attack type of competitive, so you don't have that aspect to it. You still have the whole like, oh, I wanted that tile, and it's like, okay, so what are you going to do instead? How are you going to fix this problem that you've now run into? So you get a lot of that aspect. And like I mentioned, Queen Domino, sort of an upgrade to King Domino. It adds a couple of new mechanics to it. If the kids already know King Domino, Queen Domino is a great upgrade, and honestly, it's probably a better one, especially if you've got older kids. But younger kids, 7, 8, 9-ish, it's probably better to start with King Domino. But regardless, is my number 4. At number 3, I've got Santorini. This is a game that's a nice example of a combination of several different sort of genres. You've got the abstract thinking of like 2 moves ahead that you see with Hive, chess, and those types of things, combined with an honest-to-goodness 3D spatial awareness of what's going on in the board. The whole point with this is that you're trying to build up towers so that you can sort of hop up and eventually reach the tallest peak. So the idea is, again, you want to think 3, 5, 10 moves ahead potentially, so that you can try to put yourself in an advantageous position so that you force your opponent to give you the win, or at the very least you snatch the win from them when they're just about to take it. It's a really impressively done game. It's very, very well done, and similarly to Hive and a couple of the others I talked about, it's only 2 players. So it's great in the sense of, you know, here's what you did, and you know, that's not a bad move, but here's another option that may have been better. Here's something that could have helped you. On top of that, you've got a great internal expansion with the god powers. So those add a little bit of a twist to the strategy and new ways to win. So in other words, it's more stuff that people have to essentially prevent you from being able to do. And it's really unique in that sense. It's mostly for if you have 3 players, but alternatively, you can also play with 4 players on 2 teams of 2 as well. So it's a wonderful game for a family of 4, or whatever you happen to be, whatever your situation is. Again, critical thinking, strategic thinking, long-term planning, and 3D spatial awareness, for crying out loud. There are not a lot of games that have this level of combination for child development all in one. Not to mention, it's absolutely adorable. Santorini, my number 3. At number 2, I've got My Little Cythe. And I know, I said at the beginning, I really wanted to avoid games like this that are just sort of like a down version of the original, but My Little Cythe is the exception in this case. This is an absolutely incredible game that genuinely feels like Scythe, but at the same time, it has boiled down all of the mechanics into something that is much more simple. It's something that a lot of kids are able to understand really easily, and on top of that, it still maintains the relative complexity that Scythe does. Obviously, you don't have absolutely everything involved with it, but at the same time, you are tracking down resources, you're looking in different areas of the board, you're moving around the entire board, you've got portals that allow you to go around, you're doing deliveries, you're doing quests, and the thing is, it's really relatively easy for kids as young as 7 or 8 to understand, and I find it to be a great game. I honestly enjoy it as an adult. I think it's reasonably good strategically. Obviously, I've played Scythe, but at the same time, it does a good job of keeping that balance of making it simple to understand, but at the same time, making somebody make choices. And again, just like with all of these other ones, you're talking about very long-term planning, in this case, multiple turns ahead of time, seeing where things are popping out, is it worthwhile, risk assessment, inventory management, all of that kind of stuff. Not to mention figuring out what quests you're able to do. Absolutely amazing. A great game. My Little Cythe, my number 2. At number 1, I've got Stuffed Fables, and frankly, this is a game that really caught me by surprise. I saw it and I read about it, I was like, this really sounds like fun. It sounds like it would be really interesting, and honestly, it just blew me away. It is absolutely incredibly well done, and it's really neat because this is honestly designed for kids, but it's complex. and it feels like you're playing something like Mice and Mystics almost. You have this incredible story behind it, and the way that it's presented is absolutely amazing. And on top of that, it's in a context that any child can understand, because in this game you are literally going through a storybook. The entire point is that the boards that you're playing on are pages of a story. It's amazing. It is an incredibly well-designed game. I have had an absolute blast with it, and it's fun to play with kids because it's something they understand. In the end, you are playing as stuffed animals protecting a young girl who is sleeping. And it's like, oh my God, what child doesn't connect with that theme instantly? We've got the theme, we've got the fact that you have an incredible mechanically done game in terms of you've got a character that you're growing in an RPG style, you've got skills that you're doing, you're rolling dice and determining what your moves are going to be and how they're going to be done, but it's presented in a way that is simple to understand. The move sets that you're capable of doing don't change. On top of that, it's cooperative, so that means that any adults present are able to help any kids that are playing along with it. And the thing is that it does have a relatively dark-ish theme to it, but it's one of those where, especially since it's cooperative, it's not done in a scary way. So it's something that, again, kids can really understand and appreciate. And for crying out loud, how many games can you say can help kids get over being afraid of the dark or something like that? It's just, I don't know. I've already talked too much about it. It's a great game. At the very least, I highly, highly recommend that you try this out. Stuffed Fables, far and away my #1. Well, everybody, that's it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 10 favorite games to play with kids. Now, again, I know this is a huge category and there's a lot of games that did this in the context of, well, Catan's popular, let's make one for kids. And I wanted to avoid those as much as possible, and I'm glad that I did, because it's important for me that we as adults can play games with children that we enjoy as well. And I think that these are games that are really good examples of that, on top of being games that kids can really genuinely learn from. But with that, you guys know I love to hear from you, so please let me know any and all of your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear the games that you enjoy playing with either your kids or any kids that you interact with, nieces, nephews, cousins, all of that good stuff, grandchildren. Please let me know anything and everything in the comments. But with that, thank you very, very much again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.